All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and or persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's statement of compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's show is live. I am responding to your questions. Thanks as always to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, Aliyah Jamari, audio and teleprompter, and Lolita Ratchford, floor director. What milestone did we pass a couple of weeks ago after the last live segment? This happened in the fight with the banking cartel that issues the world's money. It's very straightforward. It's a very basic fact, which I acknowledged in my social media. I do not act for humanity. Humanity acts for humanity. It's up to all the people of the world to take back their legitimate governments without interference from the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Humanity acts for humanity. Why is this a milestone? You're going to love this feature of the global currency reset. I am embedded in humanity, and I am responsible for voting the United States shares on the World Bank and International Monetary Fund Board of Governors. I help authenticate and validate decisions about use of gold from the world's monetary gold reserves in the world's currencies. I do not act for humanity. Humanity acts for humanity. All the people of the world are taking back their legitimate governments without interference from the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Then what is my role? I'm the lawyer for the world's gold and other wealth that was put in a trust at the end of World War II for the world's people. This is called the Global Debt Facility. The Global Debt Facility is managed by the world's countries who belong to the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. I want to show you Chris Ponte's interview of me in February 2015 on Channel 23's Public Access Network. It was uploaded on YouTube, and YouTube admits there are 116,230 views. And rich quick with this speculation is very, very unlikely.
Has this ever happened in history where people have bought currency for speculation and they have become rich? Has anything like that ever occurred in history?
What we're doing right now has never happened in history. It's a magnificent endeavor, and the likelihood that we pull it off is, as I said, 90 to 95%. And the reason that I'm so optimistic is every day when I go and open my emails, I see how many people are working on this and how we're all contributing to this. It's teamwork, the likes of which you've never contemplated. It's so exciting. And so I think that we're going to manage to do this, but it's not going to be done in a way that individuals are going to be getting rich quick. It's going to be done because we are doing this for our generations to come. We're cleaning up this terrible corruption that we've all been suffering from through our history.
So essentially, from the time that we became a country, the parasites were already here.
Oh, Chris, this goes back to the Sumerians.
Right. So this is nothing new. They get their tentacles in you, and they make real wealth almost impossible to acquire. But then people like yourself put your football helmet on and you go into the middle of the line and you start creating ruckuses which get people to talk. And think about just the video that you and I did in January. 22,000 people have seen that particular interview, and more have probably seen others. In the next 30 seconds, is that unbelievable? Do you feel your responsibility?
We're in the age of the internet, and we're all responsible.
Yeah. So you don't feel an extra responsibility, an extra burden? I know you're in an area where you could be a target. Does that affect you in any way, shape, or form? Oh,
I've been targeted every which way, and it just helps me the next time I know how to duck better.
How much time we have, Chris? We have about 1 minute. Well, this is another hour that went by so incredibly fast. You can follow her on Facebook. And if you're nice enough, she'll friend you and come up and do your talk show like she's done for mine. I can't, thank you enough. And you know what? I really hope that whatever transition takes place, that it will be peaceful and people can get their resources and food. And you have a lot of courage, to do what you do, because you mentioned before presidents that have gone against the way of thinking of fiat currency have been assassinated. People know why Lincoln was shot. People understood why JFK is shot. There is no mystery to any of this stuff. It's always about money, isn't it? And money leads to control, doesn't it? Is what we can do. Well, that's going to be it.
This was an interview 3 years ago on Connecticut's Public Access Channel 23. In tweeting on the United States Marines attack on the CIA, a reporter from part of the world where the ancient home of the banking cartel was located helped me disclose the fight between the banking cartel and the rest of the world. The banking cartel broke the link to the DCTV segment about how the Marines attacked the CIA's branch office in Langley, Virginia, and the CIA tried to steal the United States monetary gold reserves. Ancient Cyprus was part of the Phoenician Empire. The banking cartel, that is, the network of global corporate control and the black nobility, is at its center. That used to be the Phoenician Empire. We discussed the history of the Phoenicians last week. After the show, I uploaded the DCTV segment on YouTube. There were many comments and questions, also by email, that we're going to discuss today. In next week's segment, I'm going to continue to answer some questions from Andy's group. We heard from Andy, and that's not his real name, at the beginning of our last live segment. This is taken from the Global Currency Reset tweet, and we said that it's now manifest in reality. And there were comments. Carl said, when is the Federal Reserve done? When is the IRS done? When is the gold-backed currency coming? The currency is gold, not gold-backed. I've asked when people are getting tired of the banking cartel's corruption. We are on a Nantucket sleigh ride to kill the banking cartel whale. And that Carl who made the comment was a sock puppet. And Carl again commented. He said, when you, me, and everyone else are willing to die for those three things. Those were three questions about killing the Fed. And Carl asked, what % of the U.S. population do you think are ready to die? And I said, we're not talking about us having to die. We're all working together, and nobody has to die, as we are stronger than the banking cartel. And I asked Carl whatever clouded his thinking that way. And he said, I don't know, maybe 3,000 years of history. And I said, the banking cartel sock puppets are hiding about 10,000 years of history and then some. The banking cartel hasn't figured out that we've gotten through to enough people so that we're now manifested in reality. What does it mean? It means that the banking cartel is only play acting and lying on the world stage, whereas we are telling the truth about reality. It's easy to demonstrate that the banking cartel is corrupt because everything the banking cartel tries is simply backfiring as they play act and masquerade and lie. For example, Donald Trump is only a bit actor and is not legitimate. Donald Trump has no way of proving that he's legitimate because the Constitution of 1789 is not in effect. The bankers placed the United States federal government in bankruptcy in 1933. How can the banking cartel disprove this truth? And not to get you down, Carl was saying, but how are we working together? We have been watching you do YouTube videos on the same stuff for 3 years. We're not helping you at all. Is there really anything to help you with? It's an established fact that the U.S. federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act on the 9th of March, 1933, and I've given you the reference for that in the law. And the U.S. was declared by President Roosevelt as being bankrupt and insolvent. And this was in session of Congress, June 5, 1933. And it was also mentioned in the Federal Register by James Traficant, and I've quoted that in the teleprompter. The Board of Governors of the World Bank has declared the U.S. to be an interregnum. I represent the legitimate government of the U.S. until the Constitution of 1789 goes back into force and effect. The U.S. Constitution of 1789 was replaced by the banking cartel in 1871. The U.S. Congress has also suspended the U.S. Constitution of 1789 under a state of emergency, and all members of Congress are criminally liable for breaking the Constitution of 1789. And this sock puppet said, "Karen, thanks for taking the time to respond to me, and I agree with everything you said above. But that doesn't change the fact they control the government that have all the guns pointed at our heads and the threat of imprisonment for not complying with their scams, deceit, and criminal acts. They will and have killed to protect this system of robbery used against us. You have not demonstrated a concrete plan of action to reverse this, only vague promises of a war college simulation that says the system will change. Again, I share your spirit and ideas in all of this, but just talking about what you would like to see happen isn't going to change anything." Now, Wolfgang Struck emailed me a couple of mornings ago, and I deleted his email without reading it. I am not negotiating with the banking cartel and its agents and sock puppets, which Carl is. I've documented that the U.S. is not governed under its Constitution of 1789. This is a fact which Carl, the sock puppet on YouTube, conceded. This is huge. It means that the U.S. military is sworn to uphold the Constitution, and that means that the U.S. military is in a state of insurrection. All the guns are not pointed at the heads of the people. All the guns are going to point to the banking cartel. We know this from the power transition model. This is what I mean when I say that we are waiting for the National War College power transition model, which is 90 to 95% accurate, and for the dominoes to fall. Now, I'm going to explain why we have a turning point. Let's go back to the statement by the YouTube sock puppet account named Time to Get Huge. He said, I agree with everything you said above. I've shown that YouTube and its sock puppets are really speaking for the banking cartel. The banking cartel seems to understand that enough people recognize that the United States Constitution is not in effect, and that the proof is so compelling that they are conceding that the U.S. Constitution of 1789 is not in effect. Donald Trump has not disagreed. How could he? The U.S. Constitution of 1789 is not in effect. There are many consequences that flow from the fact that the U.S. Constitution of 1789 is not in effect. The most important consequence is that the officers in the U.S. military have sworn oaths to defend the Constitution of 1789. This is a major turning point. Let's go back and revisit this turning point. Actually, healers noticed the turning point 2 years ago, and we remarked that the global currency reset had become inevitable. The banking cartel deleted this tweet about when the global currency reset had become inevitable. The banking cartel broke the link, and so I just put a link back instead. This is so huge that the black nobility is trying to distract us with information that may be bogus about the black nobility. We already told you about who the black nobility are. This information is in a comment on the last DCTV video I uploaded. That was after I ignored an email from a person who made that comment. Why do you think the U.S. military is going to put the banking cartel in their sights? Because the Constitution of 1789 is not in effect in the U.S. This can all get very bewildering, and I don't want to confuse people. So let's instead try to make things simpler. You're hearing from me. I'm still getting through. That is very basic. Anybody who's claiming that they are my boss, no, they're not my boss, because I am contradicting them, and I'm getting through to you, and they can't prevent me from getting through. It's true that the people who are claiming that they're above me are able to interfere with the links to the information I give you. But I go back and fix the links, and then I tell you that you should pay special attention because the information is so sensitive that they're trying to interfere with it. The network of global corporate control, that is, the banking cartel, and the black nobility are not in charge. I'm telling you that I am in the very center of the international financial system, surrounded by many people, and we are all working together in our own way. This is what makes us unbeatable. We're not taking orders from anybody. We're each of us doing what we think is called for. We're concerned about each other and caring for each other, and we're all interconnected, just like starlings who fly together at sunset, and there's a link in the teleprompter showing you how they do that. It's called murmuration. This is how I know that we're in a peaceful transition. It will take us many years to clean up the corruption, but we're going to get the job done, and peacefully. One other thing to focus on, and that is humanity's relationship with itself. Why is this important? It is because we have been traumatized, and we need to heal ourselves and our relationships. The first relationship we need to heal is the relationship which we have to ourself. To thine own self be true. Today, I've wanted to bring up a very important topic. It's how we heal ourselves from the trauma that we've endured from the corruption in our money system. We have the capacity to heal ourselves, and that is what we must do. I was concerned how to bring this subject up, and then I started reading a blog which you can find in the teleprompter. And there's one sentence in particular which says, the sundry painful and traumatic events in my life as, in fact, a credential. This means that the negative, what we have endured, it's simultaneously our wisdom and strength. We have a great deal of wisdom and strength, and we're going to use this wisdom and strength to heal ourselves and ensure that our children inherit a better world. And I have another thought, and I want you to respond, and I'll use your responses as we continue to have this dialogue. I'm just scrolling through some duplicate language, and I'm attaching a tweet that I posted right after the bogus elections in the U.S., as well as documentation in my social media about the loyalty of the United States military to the people of the U.S. and not to the banking cartel. To summarize the documentation about the loyalty of the U.S. military to their oaths of office and to the U.S. Constitution of 1789, I've already dealt with the question about what's happening to the heroes in the U.S. military in the teleprompter. And I also did this on the 1st of August last year and in my tweet on the 7th of July last year. And I'm attaching them in the teleprompter. And somebody had a comment saying that in case Trump wins, and of course they did, that we should pay attention to Brexit, which shows that there is social change and people have started seeing through the matrix, and it's getting difficult for the cabals to govern. Yes, it's getting very difficult for them to govern, especially with the information that people are all looking into. And I have said that Trump has not won because the election was a total fraud without a constitution in the U.S. in place. Why didn't Trump admit the U.S. Constitution is not in effect? There was no electoral college that could vote him in. And then I went on to say in the teleprompter that the Swiss Octagon Templars are the masterminds behind the banking cartel. Their control system is falling apart. Their only defense now is to break the links to the information that I'm providing to you in my social media. And this actually works against them, as it shows their attempt to hide my information. The elites have lost their right to the world's assets at the end of World War II, thanks to Jose Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos. The Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund administer the global debt facility, and I represent the 17% vote of the U.S. on the Board of Governors until the 1789 Constitution of the U.S. goes back into effect. Some of the elites are admitting that they betrayed the people. In a television interview in December 2014, Herman Wijfels, who used to be the representative of the Netherlands on the Board of Executive Directors of the World Bank, he said, "It's my sincere opinion that through different developments and circumstances, the elite, not only in our country," he meant Holland, "but in others, have betrayed their duty to the people." And Wijfels also said, and I said this in Dutch in the teleprompter, but I also translated it. I see this as the unavoidable perversion that appears at the end of an era where an elite forms that appoints itself as master and misuses the institutions for its own profit. And I also attached the statement of the U.S. Defense Attaché in the Tokyo Embassy. He was a member of the U.S. Joint Japan Committee under the Status of Forces Agreement. And I'm also in the teleprompter, and I'll read it if we have time, attaching my letter of the 27th of January 2016 to General Joseph Dunford, Jr., who chairs the Joint Chiefs of Staff, concerning the U.S.'s obligation during the global currency reset to restore any theft of gold from the global debt facility. the Federal Reserve note is being replaced with the United States monetary gold reserves that are on deposit in the global debt facility during the global currency reset. I have repeated that the U.S. is going to observe its treaty obligations to defend Germany and Japan, and I wrote this letter on the 31st of October 2016 to the German and Japanese military attachés. Okay, so I've got some additional information that I wanted to discuss. One of the things that I wanted to discuss is people want to know where we go from here. Well, where we go from here is that we're in reality. What we're discussing right now, this is what's actual, and what you hear on the news, that's just lies from the banking cartel. And the actual wealth of the world and the world's monetary gold reserves, we're in charge of them. And there are draft agreements that I've sent to all the countries, including the draft agreement for the United States. And you can read that in the social media. And we have to negotiate that. Okay, well, we're scrolling, and I'm going to read you from a letter. Could you slow this down, please, so I can read it? Thank you. This is a letter from the attaché in Tokyo in 2014. Jim, I just spoke with Ms. Karen Hudis, Acting General Counsel of the World Bank. She would like to establish contact with you concerning an initiative she's working with the U.S. Department of Defense in several countries throughout the world. She's currently in Japan participating in joint committee activities. And then he gave my phone number in Japan. Thank you, John. John Walker, Colonel. And if you just scroll past the outro, you'll see that there's a letter that I'd like to read. Okay. I want to stop. Go back. Please go back. Thank you. I want to highlight a document which the banking cartel has removed from the documents that I posted on the internet. It shows that the Japanese are going to prevent the Federal Reserve note from crashing in order to avail of the U.S. military treaties for their defense. Is that all that you've got? Okay, so then let me tell you what else to look for in the teleprompter, because I do put all the documents up, and you ought to read them. One of the documents has to do with the treason in the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What you have is that the Knights of Malta are paying attention to orders that they're getting from the banking cartel, whereas 70% of the troops understand that what we're telling you is correct, and they are defending the United States monetary gold reserves. They understand that the Federal Reserve notes are just paper, and the rest of the world is switching into gold currency, and the United States needs to have its gold currency, which we have. All of our gold is on deposit, and one of the documents that I've put up on the internet, I'm telling you exactly where this monetary gold is. It's in tunnels buried mostly in the Philippines, and these tunnels have cameras in them, and the tunnels have, I understand from Wolfgang Struck, there are snakes in these tunnels, and you can see that the tunnels have been left intact, and all of the gold is buried in there, the world's gold. And it's over 1.7 million metric tons. Now, this is an enormous amount of gold. And I've also, in previous segments, described how we're going to monetize this gold, because gold has served as currency for many, many years.